They left you. No closure, no explanation, just silence, distance, and that all too familiar ache. Maybe I was the problem. You spiraled. You questioned everything. You wondered, if I had just needed less, would they have stayed? And then they come back, liking a story, texting you something vague. Hey, just checking in. Don't fall for it. Don't let your heart leap just because they remembered you exist. I'm Jim Rohn, and today I'm pulling back the curtain on why avoidants always come back, not because they've had some grand epiphany, but because their fear of losing you finally outran their fear of intimacy. They're not returning because you were weak. They're returning because you were the only light in their emotional maze they were too afraid to face. But this time, you won't open the door. This time, you'll understand. What felt like the ending was actually the beginning of your return to yourself. Stay with me until the end, and hit subscribe, because here, we don't wait for someone to come back. We learn how to never abandon ourselves again. When an avoidant partner decides to walk away, it's not because they've stopped feeling. The truth is they leave because the emotions are too intense for them to handle. But you don't see that. All you see is the coldness, the distance. Someone who once called you home now treats you like a burden, and you start to question everything. Did I push too hard? Was I too emotional? Too much? They don't explain. They don't stay to work things out. They disappear. They act as if leaving the relationship is a relief, like escaping something that suffocated them. But beneath that calm exterior is a sea of unprocessed emotion. Unlike you, who sits with the pain, who faces the heartbreak, the avoidant simply flips the emotional switch off. They don't want to feel, don't want to face the intimacy that triggered their deepest fears of abandonment, control, and vulnerability. They think pulling away is self-protection. They rationalize their exit, telling themselves, it was too intense, too complicated, I need space. But in truth, they're running from the only thing that could ever heal them, real connection. While you stay in the wreckage, they move on quickly, convincing themselves they're free. They throw themselves into work, distractions, casual flings, anything to avoid feeling. They think they're fine, but they're not healing, they're postponing. And you're not just grieving the loss of them, you're carrying the extra burden of self-blame. But here's what you need to know. They didn't leave because you were too much. They left because they weren't equipped to stay when love got real. The connection you offered didn't harm them, it terrified them. The painful truth is, they're not bad people, but they are wounded. And their unhealed trauma built a defense system that sees intimacy as danger. So they run. And you, with your open heart, become the very threat their nervous system is trying to escape. Understand this not to excuse them, but to stop blaming yourself. Know that you weren't left because you were lacking. You were left because you touched a part of them they were too afraid to face. And that was never your fault. After the withdrawal, the avoidant enters what I call the false independence phase. On the surface, they look fine, even thriving. They're hitting the gym, throwing themselves into work, hanging out with friends, posting bright, carefree smiles on social media. They might even start dating quickly, casually, without depth. And if you're watching from afar, you might see someone who looks liberated, free, full of energy. But don't be fooled by the highlight reel, because the truth is, they're running from their own emotions, running from a hollowness they don't yet have the language for. This isn't healing, it's avoidance. Like turning off a fire alarm instead of putting out the fire. They're not okay. They're just trying to prove to the world, to you, and to themselves that they don't need anyone. They tell themselves things like, I just want to focus on myself. Relationships are too intense for me. Or, I need space to heal. And sure, these sound mature. But beneath those words is the terror of true connection. They think distance keeps them safe, but it only deepens the loneliness they're trying so hard to avoid. Meanwhile, you're doing the real work, crying, journaling, talking to friends, facing the grief head-on. They're busy performing, I'm fine, but that performance can't last. No one can stay emotionally disconnected forever and still feel whole. Cracks begin to show. One day, after a fun night out, they feel inexplicably hollow. After a shallow date, they find themselves comparing the new person to you. A song comes on, and their chest tightens without warning. But they don't know what to do with that pain, because their defense system won't let them return to the one thing that scared them most. true intimacy. And that's why this "I'm fine" phase is a facade. Somewhere deep inside, they know they've lost something real, but they're not ready to admit it. Not yet strong enough to say, "I walked away from the one person who truly saw me." And while you're slowly healing, learning to live without them, they're still building a lonely fortress around their heart, hoping it will quiet the storm within. But it won't. It only delays the inevitable, the late awakening. There's a cruel irony that people who love avoidance often face you feel the pain first. They feel it later. While you're awake at night, broken and breathless with grief, trying to make sense of the wreckage they left behind, they seem fine, silent, detached, even happy. They're not falling apart. They're not crying. They're not spiraling the way you wish they would, because at least then, it would mean they cared. But no, they're out with friends, posting on social media, living as if your relationship left no trace. And watching that hurts. But here's the truth you need to hold on to. Avoidants don't process emotions in real time. When they leave, they don't feel it, not immediately. They shut it off. Their emotional system goes offline. Because feeling would mean facing themselves, their fears, their wounds, and their defense system won't allow that. So while you're crying and healing and rebuilding, they're just beginning to feel a vague dissonance, a restlessness, a flash of your face at 2 a.m. that hits harder than expected. But they don't know what it is. They just know something feels wrong. Their emotions are like a river trapped behind a dam. When you've already started to move on, maybe even begun to thrive, that's when their dam starts to crack. That's when the wave hits them. Not because they didn't care, but because they never learned how to. They thought pushing it down was strength. But emotions don't disappear. They wait. And eventually, they resurface, usually when they're most vulnerable, tired, or alone. And suddenly, they feel the absence of you. Not because you were better than anyone else, but because you were real. You stayed. You saw them. And now, you're gone. You may have asked yourself, why aren't they missing me? Now you know, they will. But not when you still need them to. Only when you don't. When their emotions begin to surface, a powerful phenomenon emerges. The comparison trap. They don't come back because you suddenly became the one. They come back because no one else can match what you offered in depth, understanding, and emotional safety. You were the one who spoke their silent language. You were the person who recognized the wounds they refused to admit without judgment. You were the safe harbor they could open up to, even if that terrorized them. Meanwhile, new partners are just faded echoes. They may drive nice cars or offer pleasant smiles, but they can't grasp the darkness within their soul. So the avoidant begins comparing, not maliciously, just painfully aware of the difference between something almost right and what was once profoundly real. Countless dates pass where they expect a spark, but only taste emptiness. Messages feel hollow. They can't pinpoint whether it's them or everyone else. And then they realize the safety you provided cannot be replicated by superficial games and shallow connections. That's when they remember you, not just your face, but the feeling you created, a calm where they didn't have to hide or pretend. They find themselves asking, was I wrong to let that go? Was it just love, or was it something deeper? Empathy, acceptance, a mirror for fears they still can't articulate. This phase is dangerous because they might come back. But don't mistake that return for staying. They're caught in the whirlwind of comparison between the genuine article and countless imperfect rips. What you need now is to hold strong. Keep your dignity. Don't let them pull you into the illusion of almost enough. It starts with a hard realization. What if they genuinely lose you? At first, avoidants feel relief when they walk away. They believe you'll stay, no matter what, a constant safety net, waiting in the emotional wings. They see you as untouchable, always there if needed. That illusion comforts them. But then one day, they wake up and see you living without them. They see your authentic smile, your thriving life, your independence. And suddenly, panic sets in, not because they want you back, but because they might never get you again. It's the terror of permanent loss, the dread of what they assumed would never happen. This isn't irrational fear, it's the unprepared confrontation with reality. They lived in a world where you were always a given, but suddenly, you're gone. The emptiness is impossible to ignore. That fear doesn't arrive with dramatic gestures. It comes in quiet moments, blank nights, a flash of your face in memory, the sight of you happy without them. They husband panic into small, check-in messages, faint gestures on social media. They try to gauge if your safety fall back into their hands. But you're not there anymore. You've moved on. You've grown. This is the fear of true loss, realizing that you can actually disappear from their world. It's far more terrifying than any emotional closeness once caused them. So if you've seen them return with nervous messages or vague attempts at reconnection, don't mistake it for change. It's fear, a panic that what they lost may be gone forever. Stay firm. Know that your life doesn't orbit their reaction. You didn't walk away because you were incomplete. You walked away because you were whole. You live on your terms. And if they choose to return, let it be on your terms, not as a rescue, but as a possibility. Not a fix for their fear, but a recognition of your self-respect, because you didn't survive to fill someone's panic. You survived to stand tall in your healing. After the fear of true loss arises, another wave hits the avoidant, the regret spiral. This isn't simply missing you, it's a painful realization of their emotional limits and the mistakes they made. It dawns on them that they once hurt someone special, and that truth cuts deep. At first, it's a whisper, a late-night text. "I've been thinking about you." A two-word reply to your story, or a fleeting flash of your smiling face on social media. Innocuous moments, but heavy with the weight of what they lost. They begin to recognize they broke something precious, and the guilt echoes louder than any excuse could justify. They start asking themselves, what if I had trusted? What if I had stayed closer earlier? What if I had chosen differently? It's not just sorrow for losing you, it's sorrow for losing themselves, for sacrificing trust, hope, and the gift of your gentleness for the illusion that solitude was stronger. This kind of regret isn't easy to bear. It's more than awareness, it's a confrontation with their own fracture. For someone wired to keep control, admitting vulnerability and loss is terrifying. They clung to self-reliance, but now they're left with questions. How do I fix this? When what was broken feels irreparable. That's when they spiral into thoughts of what could have been, into guilt that gnaws on their self-image, into a desperate longing for clarity, and a sense that you were the one who offered a rare form of emotional safety they never knew how to appreciate. If they reach out, it might start as a tentative apology, a quiz at 2 a.m., or a nostalgic post. But don't assume it means they're back. It's a moment of regret, a need to process the wound they opened. Without real introspection and change, it remains an echo of something lost. So, when they surface again, don't rush it. Understand their story. They're in the grip of their own remorse. They're wrestling with the fact they pushed away someone who cared deeply. But your journey isn't about rescuing them. It's about reclaiming your peace. Let them sit with their remorse. Let them feel it deeply. You stand firm. Preserve your healing. Carry no burden of their late awakening. Let them find their way back to themselves. And you, continue forward, rooted in self-respect and newfound serenity. After spiraling in regret, the avoidant enters the next phase, idealization. This is when they no longer see you fully. They only see the brightest moments of the relationship, the first sweet days, your comforting words, the sense of safety your presence brought. They remember you as a unified memory with your smile, voice, and gaze that once felt like home. What they conveniently forget are the clashes, the silence when they withdrew, the tears you shed, and all the times you compromised to maintain a connection they themselves avoided. They forget the times you had to stand firm in your boundaries, not out of anger, but out of self-respect. They forget the emptiness they created and how you stealthily filled the gap they left. They forget the fences you built not as punishments, but as shields to protect yourself. All these details fade because their regret filters you through the lens of loss, selectively remembering the good and erasing the pain. Idealizing isn't true understanding, it's wishful thinking. It's a defense mechanism to dodge the weight of guilt and the reality of what they gave up. They craft a fantasy. If I return, things can be different. It was timing, not the person. Under that filtered vision, they erase all the coldness and distance they once lived through. But you, someone who reclaimed their self-worth, see it for what it is. You know that returning to someone who idealizes superficially is stepping into the same trap. You are the one who did the true work, healed, faced the scars, and built a stronger life without second chances that don't come with accountability. You also know this moment is the most dangerous. When someone recreates the most beautiful version of you and the relationship, it feels undeniable. They might text thoughtfully, call gently, reminisce with nostalgia. But behind that facade lies a choice. They want a memory, not a future. So if they reappear with a mix of nostalgia and regret, don't rush to believe them. Stay grounded and ask yourself, what exactly are they remembering? Are they idealizing or truly evolving? If what they bring is only a half-baked memory, with no real growth or intention forward, then it's just a remix of old songs, with no new melody for both of you. During this idealization phase, you remain firm in your boundaries. You don't block them, you just don't invite them back into your heart. You can appreciate who they once were with you, but you won't pay the price of reverting to who you were back then. That version is no longer who you are or will be, because you know this. You don't live to relive memories just to diminish yourself. You are strong enough to let memories be lessons, not traps. And you walk forward, a person no longer afraid to love wholly, but wise enough not to lose themselves in the process. As you continue healing, there's a subtle phase you need to recognize: the testing waters. Avoidants don't come back in a flood of emotion. They don't say, "I miss you," or "let's give it another shot." Instead, they approach gently, as if afraid of triggering any strong reaction. The signs are whisper, soft. Liking yesterday's story, nothing more. A 2 a.m. "this reminded me of you" text. A heart react to your post, no comment. Replying to an old message, nothing fresh or direct. It's small, but intentional, a soft tap on your emotional armor, testing if it's still intact. They're checking if the window they once opened is still slightly ajar. This isn't real affection. It's curiosity laced with fear. They want to see how you're doing but are too afraid of a clear response. They're probing your boundaries, asking silently, "Are you still there? Can I still fit in?" Not because they're committed to rekindling anything, but because they're checking if they could. And you, someone rebuilding from heartbreak, you feel it. You notice the soft hits. You can sense the difference between a true gesture and a mild experiment. Remember, you deserve clarity. You have the strength not to tumble down the spiral again at a faint echo. You don't have to play this game. And if someone is testing your boundary quietly, that's not a real invitation. It's a ghost touch from someone unsure how to face you. You can choose whether to respond, but only if you want to. Not because you're still waiting, not because they pinged you. You may ignore it, respond casually, or refuse entirely, whichever aligns with your self-respect. Because in this phase, you don't owe anyone a reaction. You're not obligated to explain or close something. You close that door for your own peace. And that's what truly matters. Finally, after delicate testing waters, the avoidant readies for the crucial act, the return. But don't mistake it for a cathartic moment. No, it's a series of calculated, gentle gestures, a late-night apology, a thoughtful inquiry, a small emotive post. And it only happens when they sense that you've moved on, are thriving, or even exploring life with someone else. That's when they recognize the opportune moment to step back. When you stand strong, shining, free, that scares them more than any intimate connection once did, because then you are no longer a fallback option, but a complete person. And they realize they don't want to lose you, not as a concept, but as a reality in their world. So they come back, not because of nostalgia, but because they believe they need you back. Their return is strategic. They come quietly, intentionally. A message like, "I've still thought about you," or "I've read old messages, and I realize I was wrong," with soft sincerity and zero demands. They're tapping your boundary lightly, testing whether it still holds and whether it can be opened again. And you now healed face a powerful choice. You can respond out of courtesy or stay silent out of self-respect. Even a single thank you or hi subtly signals the door remains slightly ajar. If you enter into conversation, they'll escalate. "I've grown. I'm working on this. I won't repeat, but understand this." A return message does not equal transformation. It's a flicker born of fear, a tactic, not a commitment. They are probing your path, not inviting you onto theirs. The real test isn't their apology. It's their consistency going forward. Your direction now is yours to set. If they return with real growth, not hollow words, but intentional acts, healthy communication, willingness to heal old wounds, then perhaps you offer a cautious chance. But if this return is built on hesitation, remorse without change, or renewed but shallow attempts, you owe them nothing, because you weren't someone they held on to before. You are not someone they can hold on to now, unless they do the work. In that moment, you reclaim your power. You don't need to prove your strength. You lived through it. And if someone walks back into your world, let them bring a new song, not the same faded record. If they can't, let them walk away, and you will still stand, without regret, without anger, just continuing to live in your own truth. Even if an avoidant comes back late with apologies or tentative reconnection, it's all part of a familiar cycle, the come and go loop. Here's what matters. Unless they undergo genuine healing, every return is just a temporary fix for their anxiety, not proof of real change. Imagine patching a torn garment without reinforcing the fabric. The tear will reappear. For avoidants, unless they address the root fear of intimacy, trauma from past wounds, they'll continue to withdraw whenever closeness becomes overwhelming. And one day, when the emotional intensity grows too strong, they'll leave again. This cycle isn't caused by your inadequacy. Instead, it reflects their own internal limits. They fear control, vulnerability, loss of self. Their return may stem from loneliness, regret, the terror of real loss. But only by choosing to stay and work on their wounds can they break the loop, and that is not easy. You deserve a relationship with someone mature enough to stay and grow with you, not someone who lingers only to momentarily soothe their fear. If they can't commit to the long haul, if they only chase sparks they can't hold, then you should not stick around. You are not a personal healing journey for someone else. You're not a soft place for their on-off cycle. And here's the best part. Knowing this returns full power to you. You no longer have to chase explanations, rationalize choices, or hold the door open. Now you ask yourself, are you ready to truly own your journey and walk forward with me? If they're not, then you have the strength to walk away. That is your authentic maturity. And that's exactly why you're not at fault when they return. It doesn't reflect your worth, it highlights their inability to sustain intimacy and long-term commitment. The cycle of coming and going isn't about your value, it's about their internal limits. You deserve a relationship where presence isn't temporary, where closeness isn't just a moment, it's a willingness to grow together, day by day. And when they return, you have the strength to ask, can you truly stand beside me, not just at the good times, but during the ordinary, the hard ones, the imperfect ones? If the answer is no, then you are strong enough to walk away. Life is not lacking in those who value you. You don't need someone else to change to be happy. You have the courage to close one chapter and the confidence to open another. Real life begins when you love yourself enough not to allow anyone to leave without taking responsibility for their own emotional journey. Remember, you don't have to endure an unhealed cycle. You can guard your heart. You can choose to never step into that loop again. And you are entirely right to continue loving, cherishing, and growing, not just with others, but most importantly, with yourself.